Hey, I hope you are doing fantastic. I want to talk about consistency and consistency in what you carry out and in obedience to orders. I'm thinking of Crito by Plato, where Socrates decides to stay and remain in jail, to be executed. And one of the argument he makes is that it would be unjust of him to disobey the laws he disagrees with. Even if it were the case that the law is wrong, you should still obey it. And I'm not 100% clear on whether Socrates believes this law is unjust or not. I personally think that Socrates' trial was a bunch of crap and that he shouldn't have been executed or convicted or anything. And I also dislike another argument he makes where essentially he's saying that Sisyphus wouldn't be happy because he says that had he asked for exile, then the same thing would have happened, and he would have like he's getting exiled for practicing philosophy, which is the goal of life, for him, for his life specifically. And so if he went to another city, the same thing would happen because people wouldn't like it anymore there than they did at Athens. And so he would get exiled again, or he would get executed there. And he was too old to just go hopping from city to city, just getting exiled and whatever. So I think that, if it truly is a God-given mission to do that, then to be consistent with his beliefs that where a man has one taking up his stand either because it seems best to him or in obedience to his orders, there I believe he is bound to remain and face the danger, taking no account of death or anything else before this honor. Well, if this battle is over, you can go to another battle here and like keep doing it until you can't, and then you start again. I think that would be more in line with Socrates' thinking. Like I think Socrates is in that argument being somewhat inconsistent to himself. Another argument he makes is, well, that's I didn't ask for exile, so now I would have to escape to get to the other place, and then I would get there and I would have the reputation of a man who ran away. And so they wouldn't listen to me, like because I said that where a man has one taking off his stand, he should remain there, taking no account of death or anything else before the Son. That's a line in the Apology. And so I would get there, and they would go look at me like, "Are you the guy who said that line?" And then when you were about to die, you just ran away like a whiny little baby. And so they wouldn't even listen to me. Like it wouldn't even get to a part where they exiled me. I would just get laughed off. And that argument I think would have more merit, but it's kind of the same argument. It's like what's the point of going somewhere else? But then he also makes another argument where he says, "I've chosen to stay in this city," and I see this looking at it with a modern lens as Socrates sort of speaking of a social contract of sorts. Not that I know that much about a social contract. I went over it briefly in humanities at school. And he says, well, I knew that this was the law and I chose to abide by it. So I have to abide by the whole of it. I can't just cherry pick, and be like, well, this law is good, so I'm going to follow this law, but that law, I just don't like it. It would be like a cop choosing to enforce laws as he pleases. Well, he's not allowed to park here, but I think it's fine, so I'm not gonna give him a ticket. But that guy, he killed someone, so I'm gonna arrest him. And or well, that guy, he killed someone, but I kind of agree, like that guy had it coming, so I'm just gonna let it. Like it's ridiculous, like if you're a cop, you enforce the law. It doesn't matter whether you like the law, whether you hate the law, whether you like the guy or you hate the guy or whatever. You do your job. And Socrates is saying, well, that's me. I'm that cop. Like, I may hate this, I may love it. It doesn't even matter. I don't think he even states clearly whether he agrees with the law or not, but he's just saying that, you have to follow it. Because he's sort of saying, and this reminds me of a class, my ethics class, which had sort of a legal connotation to it. Like, we looked at a lot of case files, and they talked about implicit consent, right? This idea that, if you're playing, like, if you join a table game, right, and everybody's playing by the same rules, and then you start going along with it, well, you can't just, at a moment's notice, start abiding by your own rules. You gave implicit consent by being in that game with them and playing with them by the rules. You can't just say, like, oh, well, now I get to roll the dice 3 times because I'm just that guy. It doesn't work like that, pal. But my question is, because then there's also civil disobedience, right? And that's something that I think it isn't entirely without merits. So I think the easiest example, and the one that a lot of people resort to when discussing the distinction between morality and law, is that slavery used to be legal. And it was legal in the time of Socrates. Right? It wasn't quite the same. Like, it wasn't that Atlantic slave trade sort of more slavery that we think of, because I think slaves could buy back their freedom. I'm not entirely clear on the specifics. They were still slaves. It's awful. But I don't think that I should be compelled to follow unjust laws. And I don't agree with Socrates that he had a duty to the state to be executed because he had conversations with people on the street. Because that's all it was. He was tried on account of corrupting the youth and impiety, if I recall correctly. And I know that there's people that interpret Socrates as almost an atheist. I personally don't think he was. I think he believed he like, maybe not exactly in the gods as they were in Greek tradition, but I certainly believe that he had some belief in the supernatural, and in a, maybe not in the realm of forms. That's more Plato, right? But I do think that Socrates would believe that the mind continues to exist after death. At any rate, the point is, should consistency be held higher than your values? If you've decided to be a certain way, to act in accordance with some principle, should that principle take precedence over your judgment at any given time? If you decide to label yourself, I don't know, a utilitarian or a Kantian deontologist, and then you are faced with the axe murderer, and he won't go away for an answer. He wants to know yes or no, and you have your friends in the attic, right? Then you shouldn't be blinded by this label that, oh, you know what, I'm a deontologist, I'm not gonna lie. Or if you're a utilitarian, well, I'm Raskolnikov, I'm gonna kill the old lady, because that's gonna maximize utility. Dude, and this happens, right? Of course, it's usually, I would imagine, it's usually not of that magnitude. You know, the actions aren't, well, I'm gonna go kill that old lady so I can redistribute the wealth, and it's gonna make my life better. And you know that lady is a piece of shit anyways, so I'm just gonna fucking do it. You know, like I'll kill her, and the world is gonna be a better place. And like dude, like, are you really gonna let that decision you made for whatever reason to be a utilitarian, you know, through and through? Are you really gonna let that get you to rationalize murder or whatever it is? You know, if you think that, I'm trying to think of like something that's more day to day. You know, like if you think that you should make your friends feel good, you know, are you really gonna tell your friend that she looks great in that outfit, or that he or that the haircut suits your guy? You know, like your boy comes up to you and he's like, hey dude, I like this haircut, and you just don't have the heart. You don't have the heart to tell him, like, dude, don't get that haircut again, bro. Like, get rid of your barber. That is not the haircut for you. I like if you've decided, you know, that you should make your friends feel good, are you gonna let that get on top of your desire to be honest, if you do have such a desire? Or are you gonna be like, hey dude, I don't think that haircut is for you? And then, you know, when he asks you next time he gets a haircut, if he does ask you, because maybe you were kind of mean to him last time, and so he's gonna be hesitant to ask you. But then next time he asks you whether you like something, and you say yes, you know, I freaking love it, man, you rock that. That is the best haircut I've ever seen, and it suits your face perfectly. It's gonna be so much more meaningful. It's gonna be so much more meaningful because he's gonna know that you genuinely like it. Whereas the guy that always says, "Oh yeah, dude, you look great." Well, do I really look great? You know, I can't look great every single time I ask him. You know, or is that a good? You know, but my point is consistency. Consistency. It's important. It's important to be consistent, right? I think to a degree that you shouldn't go to the opposite radical stance where, well, I'm a new person every day. So today, you know, I'm gonna be super loud and super, you know, all over the place, and tomorrow I'm gonna be completely mute, and, you know, 2 weeks from now I'm gonna dress like a rock star. Like you can do that, but I personally think that it would not be in your best interest in terms of how you interact with others. You know, if you're entirely inconsistent, or if you're like, you're gonna be vegan today and carnivore tomorrow, like you know, I wouldn't judge someone for doing that, but at the same time, I wouldn't advise someone to do it. If someone wants to do it, fine. But if someone were to come and ask me for advice, then I would probably advise against. Like, I think that the right thing to do is somewhere in the middle. You know, it's the mean. You don't want excess. You don't want deficiency. You want the right amount. You know, you don't want to be the same person. You know, you don't want to talk about the same thing whenever you sit down to eat. You don't want to. I think I gave the other example already. But with terms of law, or probably religion, I'm not a religious person. I would consider myself an agnostic. But I remember, I think it was on The Practice, that one of the episodes was a woman who was about to have a miscarriage. And she was far along on her pregnancy. And so she needed a C-section. But if I recall correctly, the episode I'm referencing, she was deeply religious. and for whatever reason, I don't know exactly, she couldn't get a C-section due to her faith. And she like deep down, behind all of these walls, she realized that she wanted to get that C-section, and the husband was taking her to court so that the judge would order her to have a C-section. And it was sort of implied, or the show alluded to the fact that the woman sort of wanted to lose that trial, because then she could, like, the right thing would take place, and she wouldn't be blamed for going against her beliefs. And so eventually what happens is that the doctor kind of just does a C-section, like sort of shady, right? Like he takes her for a routine checkup, and before you realize that, the baby is out. And the woman, doesn't press charges, doesn't do anything. She just goes home and it's like, oh, well, whatever. But still, it's like she didn't want to make that decision. She realized that it was the right decision, but she couldn't make it because she was she had such great a necessity to abide in accordance with her religion. Like Socrates, maybe Socrates, I don't think is the case. Socrates, I don't think he wanted to go anywhere else, right? For the reasons discussed. If I were to do it with good reputation, then same thing would happen again. I'm not down for that. If I were to do it now, I couldn't even get through the door. They would just laugh me off. But there are times where somebody wants to do the right thing, but they're so trapped in their beliefs, and they need to be consistent with whatever label it is that they have adhered to. Oh, I can't do that because I'm whatever, I'm a utilitarian. So I can't do that because I wouldn't be maximizing utility. Or I'm a deontologist, so I can't do that because I wouldn't be acting in accordance with that's virtue ethics. I couldn't do that because it would be wrong for me to do that, even if the consequences are right. And I think with morality, it's extremely tricky, because sometimes it's very hard to determine what the right thing to do, what the right thing to do is. And there's plenty of examples. Like the trolley problem. Do you kill someone to save 3 people, or like you're gonna lie, but it's gonna be the lesser of 2 evils. And sometimes, good actions have bad consequences, and sometimes bad actions have good consequences. And something I was also thinking about is how you could be a terrible person and be doing a lot of stuff with an ulterior motive, but then if something happens that prevents you from carrying out your ulterior motive, like if someone is using someone, right? Like, say I become friends with this guy because his father is a very powerful man, and I'm gonna gain access to nuclear lunch codes, through this guy, whatever. It's a stupid scenario, but I befriend him, I buy him beer, I invite him to my house, I buy him a nice jacket, we go skydiving, we go to amusement parks, we're best friends, bro. Like, I know everyone in his family, everything, and I'm only doing this because I want to get to those codes, right? And then if I do get the codes, I'm a piece of shit. I did all of that just for the codes. And then once I got the codes, I blew up a whole country. But then, if I don't get to the codes, and I don't end up doing any atrocity with the codes, because I got ran over by a bus, and I'm dead, and I can't do anything, and nobody finds out that I had an ulterior motive, then on paper, I'm a great guy, and that guy's probably going to mourn my death, and he's going to be completely clueless that I was only using him. And for just for reference, for the record, for legal reasons, all of these is just a thought experiment. I don't have any intentions to do any sort of harm to any country or anybody. But the point is that that would, you could be a really bad person and do really good things to accomplish something really bad. But if you don't accomplish the bad after accomplishing the good, then the good is still tainted by that bad intention. But it isn't actually grounded on something evil. It's like, well, it's like the person is bad, but the actions are good. It's weird. It's complicated. It's tricky. And there's also many instances of like if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? Like if I work at a kitchen, I did used to work at a kitchen actually, and I don't wash my hands, but I did wash my hands, just to be clear. I wash my hands almost excessively, I would say. And I prepare a bunch of food with dirty hands, and people eat it, and nobody gets hurt. They don't get sick or anything. And they don't find out, then it's as if I didn't do anything wrong. Then if I were to eat food, and the guy didn't wash his hands, and I found out, I would be upset, of course. But if I don't find out, then is it really like wrong for someone to do that? Like by consequences, no. Like nothing happened. Or like if I insult someone, I say, hey, you're a fucking piece of shit. Then that person's gonna be offended. It's gonna be bad. It's bad. It's wrong to insult someone. You would say. But then if I go up to him and say, t'es une marde, toi, t'es une marde, man, je te déteste, and you don't understand what I said, maybe the intonation, but I could say, hey man, t'es une marde, là, t'es vraiment un connard, toi, t'es cave, t'es laid, t'es vraiment, toi, c'est que t'es con, man. T'es tellement cave. And like I could like say it in a way that you wouldn't assume that I'm saying something back to you. I could tell you, eres un pedazo de mierda, pero gigante. O sea, eres la peor mierda que he visto. And I'm getting a little carried, but I could say, like, te odio. O sea, es que a ti te odio. Tú eres la peor persona que conozco. And if you don't speak Spanish, you would almost say, like, think I'm like saying something good to you, maybe, by my facial. So in that case, like if you didn't know what I said, then you wouldn't know that it was a bad thing, So was it a bad thing? Like that's what I'm wondering. Like yeah, I would say so. In fact, it reminds me of like when I was a child, I read a post on Facebook that said if you smile while you're talking on the phone with someone else, the other person will notice. And as a kid, I believed it. I thought I never tested it. But there's so much mystery, in my view, from my point of view, concerning morality or ethics or what the right thing to do is and dilemmas and everything. And I think that there's many cases where you just have to let go of every preconceived notion you have and just look at that case. You just have to look at it micro. You can't look at it macro. Because if you do, like, you're gonna fuck up, dude. And like right now, like maybe this person, dude, like they can't handle the truth. Like you really need to fucking lie to this guy. Otherwise, he's gonna fucking go crazy, bro. Like if you tell him that his dad is not his dad, bro, like that can't, like his whole world is gonna shatter, dude. Like you cannot tell him. Like if he asks you, dude, like you did the DNA test and he's like scared to look. And he's like, bro, is he really my dad? Like maybe you just gotta fucking lie to him. Or maybe you don't. I don't fucking know, and it pisses me off. But anyways, I'm not even talking about Crito anymore. This rant is now over.